Jeffrey Wolf.
Here.
Paul Kim.
Here.
Ken Bruno.
Here.
Connie Wang. Here. Stephanie Zhang. Here. Jason Kim.
Here.
Thomas Matarazzo.
Here.
John Madison.
Yes.
Barnabas Will.
Here.
Dr. Cirillo.
Here.
Angela Spizzeski, I know him
Here.
just for the name. Sorry. And Matthew Petracca.
Here.
Petracca.
In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, I hereby state that adequate notice of this regular meeting has been provided to the public by a written notice dated, I'm not sure what the correct date is, but,
January.
oh, that is January 16th?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry, January 16th, 2018, sorry. The meeting notice has been posted on bulletin boards located inside school buildings and at the Board of Education office, communicated to at least one of the board's designated newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk of Palisades Park. Next is the report of the superintendent, Dr. Cirillo.
Yes, so I think this is clearly one of my favorite board meetings, the month of October, not only because by law we have an obligation to present our test scores to the public, but this evening I was able to have the architect who did a extensive review of our schools come here and give a timeline to the public. I know it's been a very hot topic item. So the best part is the students that clearly make our job as an educator, as board members, a privilege to work with and for, and as family members. Again, I commend each and every one of you. As a parent, I know the sacrifices you make. I respect, appreciate, and really I tip my hat to you for trusting in us as educators of Palisades Park with your children. Clearly they are the shining stars. They not only going to get a certificate tonight and a great round of applause, but I want them to get the feeling of being the most appreciated children in our schools amongst every child. But before we do that, because that's why we're all here, Joanna Halley, high school English teacher, was just acknowledged by the State Department of Education as one of 4 members in the state to be recognized as an ambassador because of the after-school programs our 21st Century offers children in the district. In addition, last Friday I was at Bergen Community College, and I was the recipient on behalf of the Palisades Park Junior Senior High School, in addition to Ms. Voris, our high school vice principal, a $1,000 check because of the environmental awareness that our high school students continue to show, take part in river cleanups and many collection of binders for underprivileged children. It really goes a long way. So I want to honor those people at a separate event, but I do know that $1,000 goes a long way, and it's a credit to those kids and the efforts of the teachers, of course. But for tonight, the students. I know there are some repeat recipients. I'm going to call your names. I'm going to ask our board president to help me with the presentation of these beautiful certificates made by me. Sorry if I spelled your name wrong. I did not. In no specific order, I know this young lady's at a boarding school. That's how great she's doing, and you better not go to the academies if you're in the 8th grade. Otherwise, I'll come to your homes. Jason, they cannot go. First, Allison O. Are you here? Congratulations. Next, we have Jason Lee. Jason here. Benjamin Hahn. Benjamin. He's studying. Isabella Alexis is here. Great job. Leah Nugent. Leah, are you here? There she is. I think Leah is our youngest recipient. Congratulations. Great job. Awesome work. And so you know, Leah and my son are in the same grade this year. So I told him to sit next to you if he ever comes to Palisades. I'm just kidding. Great job, honey. Matthew Lee. Matthew is a repeat. We'll see you next year, buddy. Keep it up. Did Matthew get a perfect score in both?
Only in math.
Only in math? What's wrong with you, Matthew? Hold on. Did Leah get a perfect score in both?
In ELA.
Someone got a perfect score in both.
That's Irene.
Irene. And Sojung was here last year as well. Congratulations. Solomon Song. Solomon. So, Solomon, I think, who was the algebra student? Someone got a perfect score in geometry. Who was it? Solomon, was it you?
Algebra 2.
Algebra 2. These guys are too shy. It's like, I read the results. Believe me, that's incredible. That is by far one of the best achievements that I've seen in Algebra 2. It's not an easy test, so congratulations, buddy.
Thank you.
Justin Lee. Justin, are you here? Sujung Kim. Sojung. Great job. Both tests? Do you write the test? No. You should grade it, since you know all the answers. 2 years in a row. Perfect score.
Very nice.
I think there's a motion on tonight's agenda that we hire her. Sujung, you're going to start tutoring tomorrow. Kiana Cho. Kiana, are you here? No. Anyway. I do really know for the parents who, again, the sacrifices which I mentioned earlier is very, very much appreciated. We have children here that took the test in the 3rd grade for the first time. We have students that are now juniors in high school. And guys, this is a true reflection of our district. And I know it's a glimpse of perfection. Unfortunately, sometimes, and you'll see test scores and results in a little while if you want to stay, it is very lengthy. We will put this all on our website. It's going to be a lot to absorb tonight. But for someone like Sujung, who had a perfect score 2 years in a row, unfortunately, she didn't show growth. At least that's what... Guys, I don't make the rules here. This is the state of New Jersey. The state of New Jersey will tell us that she did not grow. I will tell you she did more than grow. To get back here like Matthew 2 years in a row, anyone else 2 years in a row? Guys, that is a real testament to your efforts, to your academic studies, and to your parents and all you. Please continue to do what you're doing. Share it with your neighbors and friends, and thank you again. I do need to go to closed session at the end. I will also ask for 2 resolutions in new business, but that is my report. Oh, I apologize. Mr. Joshua Thompson is here. He is an architect with Perret Samjian. He will give a very brief synopsis of the timeline that many people have been inquiring about with regard to a referendum in this district and how the process with regard to conversations at the state level and potential reimbursements would go. So, Josh, I appreciate you being here. Sorry we put it all on one night.
I will keep it brief because I know there is a lot of other business going on today. We started to partner with the district earlier this year under a professional service agreement, and one of the first things that the administration brought to our attention was the need for renovation of the existing buildings, just some dilapidated concerns and various other things. And to that end, the district had already done a lot of due diligence with the previous professional to walk through the buildings and identify projects for a 5-year plan. As we began talking, it became clear to us that these weren't projects that were 5 or 10 years out. They're projects that we really need to prioritize even sooner. And that is when we started to discuss a referendum. What I distributed to the board here, and I'm sorry if I was 1 or 2 short, was a timeline that we put together back in August. A referendum is not a slow process. It typically takes about 1.5 years just to get to the vote. Once you vote, and if it's approved, you then look at another year, 2 years, 3 years for full implementation. A lot of the work we try to do is over the summer, so it's the least impact to students. The summer is a very finite window, and there's only so much work you can get done in that window, so sometimes it does take multiple years. In talking about the timeline, though, we began to use the list that the previous professional had provided and estimate the total cost of what we thought the project would be. But coming from Perret Samjian Architects as an associate, I don't want to take another professional's word for it. So what we did on October 1st, you might have seen, I was here walking around some of the schools, or all the schools, for a couple hours, and we reviewed top to bottom every school, from the roofs down to the basements and everywhere in between. What we are able to do from that is come up with a priority list. Now, there's going to be some things that we find on that list that, if there's a roof leak, we know that's a priority number one. Something else, maybe we need to address it, but the boiler is 15 years old. While we should be replacing it because it's about to die, maybe we can still get another year or two out of it. Basically, the next step for us at this point is we are on the line item PSA to provide updated estimates. And we have a range there of September 24th to actually October 19th, so we are right there. Clock is ticking, so I gotta hurry up. With the estimates, what we will do is, based on our walk earlier this month, we will then identify every single scope item with a sketch and an individual estimate. So for the ECC here, one of the concerns we had was on the roof. We will issue a sketch that shows exactly what part of the roof that we're proposing to replace, the square footage, and exactly how much we think it will cost. Our fees, other professional fees, permitting, bonding, a little money for allowance and contingency as we start to develop the project, and we will be able to distribute that information to each of you in a binder by your next board meeting. At that point, what we ask is about a 2-month review. So think maybe between your November and your December meetings for you to review and say, all right, you're the architect, you're saying we need to replace 15,000 square foot of roof, we only want to do 10. And kind of go project by project, just like that. That will develop the final scope for the referendum, because at that point you'll have our recommendation. You all are the ones that live in the building on a daily basis, so you might know things better than I do, but together combined, you come up with the list. And essentially, with referendums, that the target vote that we have out there, can I share this?
Please.
September 2019 would be the vote for the public. To get to September 2019, all paperwork needs to be on file with the state by March. So with the board and obviously with public input, reviewing these things through November and December and approving the final referendum scope, that gives me 2 months to put together the boxes and boxes of paperwork that have to go down to the state. The state needs that 6 months before the vote to the day. And from that point, they will issue a letter and say the following projects are approved for state aid, which could be up to 40%. The following projects are not approved for state aid. We will get the numbers. The district's financial group can take those numbers, come up with the tax impact. Things start to go to the county board of elections, sample ballots, and all that kind of happens in that last 6 months before the vote. So where we are right now is still scoping and estimating the projects, trying to figure out what exactly the referendum will entail. But there is a cutoff period of that. We have January 4th on our list, because it'll take me 2 months to complete the applications, and then there's a 6-month quiet period.
And Josh, just for the, for clarification, because I know it's a lot to process if you're not familiar with the referendum procedures. You spoke about the state being issued the paperwork, the submission in March of 2019. And the reason for that very likely would be for the potential reimbursement of 40% on any renovations to our district. That lessens the burden on the taxpayers. Okay, so any renovation to an existing structure, if you want to speak to that very briefly so they have a better understanding. And again, we will do full-blown renderings when the time comes. We're going to plan this properly. This is going to be probably one chance at doing it right. And it might be a big number, but it's addressing needs in a district, 3 schools, a district, and not one building, that has been not at the forefront for a very long time. So if you can just talk about the 40% reimbursement potentially to the community.
Absolutely. So the state basically will take whatever project scope that we come up with as a team and identify whether a project is eligible or ineligible. Eligible projects would be any renovations, roof projects, boilers, unit ventilator replacements, even ceiling tiles, things of that nature. The one thing they typically don't cover are technology-based improvements, wireless access points, Ethernet cabling, things like that. LED signs outside, I've seen not
But
covered, but all
windows
the
and
lighting,
plumbing and
windows,
electrical,
all the
can and will be.
infrastructure is
The
typically
expensive
eligible.
things for you home builders.
And so what they will do is, after we make that submission, they will review everything. They have 90 days to review, and then they will issue a letter and say, project by project, what has been identified and what is eligible. We've seen anywhere from, I actually just had a district get 47% because they actually were on the low end.
Now we'll hold you to 40.
Yeah. But conservatively, what we say is they fund up to 40%. We like to say 35, just because there may be some other things. I'll ask you for the other 12%.
Matt?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this project concerning renovations and upkeep, or are you also planning to do additional capacity?
Paul, I think, and again, in speaking to the buildings and grounds, I know Ken Bruno, I know Jeffrey, I know Jason, have sat with Correct Samjian, have reviewed what was identified in the long-range facility plan last year and the year prior. It is a combination of both.
Excellent.
Yeah, currently we have identified 66 projects at all three schools combined. So again, it's everything from LED lights all over the school.
Additional building as well?
Right now, we're
Capacity.
targeting Lindbergh.
Now you're gonna upset the high school people.
Well, the reason why we're targeting Lindbergh, at least at this preliminary stage, is the state also gives you funding for what they call unhoused students. So-
Every student is housed, every student has a seat.
Yes, the state has an ideal school. They will take your school plan and match it up against their ideal plan and say, well, in our ideal plan, we only have 15 students in each classroom. You have 18, which you're completely liable to do, but now you have 3 unhoused students. We'll give you money to create an addition to house those 3 students. So, very simply, that's how it works.
And I think just, again, there may be questions, I know we sort of are out of order, it's not audience participation. I don't want to keep Josh here, but I promise you, and I know him personally, not personally as a friend, but having worked with him since, I think the board retained him in February or March, is not him, but the firm. They will be here, they will have to be here. They will have to speak to the public, the only way that this potentially goes forward. And I know it's a long time from now, September is 10 months away. But it's a process, and it's a lengthy one that requires proper planning and a lot of support from the community. Any questions do we have to open to audience, I guess, if there are any questions? Or
Yeah, we can do that. Let's do it.
are there any questions by show of hands before we do that? Excellent,
Really?
thank you.
I just have one. So what, the referendum would be the difference that's not going to be reimbursed, or the referendum will be the entire cost, and then afterward it is reimbursed?
Correct, and the tax impact is on the net. But
Correct, the
referendum
difference
would
between
be
the
whole
two,
thing.
correct, okay, thank you.
Thinking of selling your home now, huh?
No,
Don't do it, Jane.
I'm not.
Thank you, Josh, appreciate it.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do not have any report at this time. Mr. Petracca, do you have a report?
I will have some discussion in closed session on negotiations and litigation and the status of the investigative report that I was to prepare in closed session.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to minute approval for August 30th, September 13th, and September 19th special meetings. Can we have a motion?
I move on that. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeffrey Bull,
Yes.
Paul Kim,
I wasn't here last month.
which one, September
13 or
19th?
19? No, that was the 27th that you missed, you're okay.
Okay?
You're-
Confused.
Those were the special meetings regarding this police issue.
Please, show, I was there. Yes, sorry.
Ken Bruno.
Not a meeting.
Ken Bruno?
Yes.
Connie Wang?
I abstained from the September 13th, but yes for the other.
Stephanie Jang? Yes. Jason Kim?
Yes.
Tom Matarazzo?
Yes.
John Matisich?
I abstain on September 19th and yes on the other two.
Barnabas Road.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to committee reports, Finance, Mr. Madison.
Before you, you have 11 resolutions. I move on the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeffrey Wu,
Yes.
Paul Kim,
Yes.
Ken Bruno,
Yes.
Connie Wang,
Yes.
Stephanie Jang,
Yes.
Jason Kim,
Yes.
Tom Matarazzo.
Yes.
John Madisich.
Yes.
Barnabas Road.
Yes.
Next is Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Bruno.
Before you, buildings and grounds, you have two requests, one for Lindbergh, one for the high school. I'd like to move on consent agenda on both.
Seconded.
I second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeffrey Wu.
Yes.
Paul Kim.
Yes.
Ken Bruno.
Yes.
Connie Wang.
Yes.
Stephanie Jang.
Yes.
Jason Kim.
Yes.
Tom Matarazzo.
Yes.
John Madisich.
Yes.
Barnabas Road.
Yes.
Guys, if I may, just for clarification, on the report of buildings and grounds number 2, that is pending lease agreement that Matthew will be drafting with the potential clients. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next is Personnel, Dr. Matarazzo.
Yes, before you have 9 resolutions. I move on all 9, but I recuse on Samantha Matarazzo and James Mascola. I move.
Do we need a,
Second.
so if you recuse, do we need someone else to make a motion for that? I believe we do.
Tom, what are you recusing on the 21st century?
Yes, 21st century.
He's recusing himself.
On the
One
21st
resolution.
century, those 2 names. Okay. One's my daughter, one's my son-in-law.
Yeah, then let's have someone else to make a motion.
Okay.
Can someone make a motion for personnel?
I make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeffrey Wu.
Yes.
Paul Kim.
Yes.
Ken Bruno.
Yes.
Connie Wang. Yes. Stephanie Jang. Yes. Jason Kim.
Yes.
Tom Matarazzo.
Yes, except for those 2 that I mentioned, recusing on Samantha Matarazzo and James Mascola.
John Madisich.
Yes.
Barnabas Road.
Yes.
Next is curriculum, Mr. Jason Kim.
We are postponing the curriculum by the request of our superintendent.
Okay, thank you very much.
So,
Negotiation.
and you hear, what
We're
you
going to
said?
postpone it. We're actually in the process of updating all of our curriculum. And
All
we
3 of
will,
them? All 3 resolutions?
there's only one under curriculum, I believe.
Yeah, it's only 1.
That's policy you might be
I'm
looking
sorry,
at.
put that for
Yep,
you.
that's okay.
Thank you. Negotiation is Mrs. Jane.
There's no report at this moment.
Okay, thank you. Policy, Mr. Paul Kim.
Yes, before you, there's one resolution, policy number 5141.21. Concerns subject matter that it states that it's required of the Board of Education to develop a policy for emergency association of opiate antidote to the students, staff member, or other person experiencing opiate overdose. And also the board requires required to develop a policy for the school district that has grade 9 to 12. And that antidote is Naxozo, and I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeffrey Wu.
Yes.
Paul Kim.
Yes.
Ken Bruno.
Yes.
Connie Wang.
Yes.
Stephanie Jang.
Yes.
Jason Kim.
Yes.
Tom Matarazzo.
Yes.
John Madisich.
Yes.
Barnabas Road.
Yes.
Next is PTA, PTSA, Ms. Connie Wang.
No report at this time.
Thank you. Student activities, field trips.
Jason.
Mr.
Yeah,
Jason Kim.
Before me, we have a 3 resolution for consent agenda. I'd like to make a motion to pass all these 3.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeffrey Wu.
Yes.
Paul Kim.
Yes.
Ken Bruno.
Yes.
Connie Wang.
Yes.
Stephanie Jang.
Yes.
Jason Kim.
Yes.
Tom Matarazzo.
Yes.
John Madisich.
Yes.
Barnabas Road.
Yes.
Calendar food services, Mr. Barnabas.
Will we close this?
Thank you. And NJSBA liaison, Mr. Barnabas. Okay, thank you. Any old business? New business?
Before I turn the floor over to Ms. Tony Bongard and Ms. Krista Boris, I do need two separate resolutions, please. One regarding my submission of the school self-assessments for our HIB reports. If someone can make a motion on that, please.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeffrey Wolf,
Yes.
Paul Kim,
Yes.
Ken Bruno,
Yes.
Connie Wang, Stephanie Jang,
Yes.
Jason Kim,
Yes.
Tom Matarazzo.
Yes.
John Madison.
Yes.
Barnabas Wolf.
Yes.
They also, if you don't mind, required by law, non-public school consultation for funding. Notre Dame is our non-public in the community. They do receive funding via our public schools. We have met with them, we have consulted with them. We do need a resolution to submit to the county of Bergen.
I move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, is there money involved in this?
Yes,
How
yes.
much?
Angela, if you remember specifically, there are different lines for each, from each title account.
It's
They are
num-
eligible
it's
based
number
on.
7 on the finance.
Number
Number
seven,
7 on the
thank you, Diane.
finance.
So it's based on each title account, based on their students that are eligible.
Okay,
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Tom and Ken? Yeah.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeffrey Wolf,
Yes.
Paul Kim,
Yes.
Ken Bruno,
Yes.
Connie Wang, Stephanie Jang,
Yes.
Jason Kim,
Yes.
Tom Matarazzo.
Yes.
John Madison.
Yes.
Barnabas Wolf.
Yes.
And at this point, our presentation of, and although it says park, the state has also addressed as part of the new CUSAC regulations that all assessments, recommendations for improvement, and any shortcomings be presented now publicly. So again, for the purposes of tonight, we are complying. I will tell you all, this is something that is going to absorb most of your time, energy, and efforts. It will be on our website, and I promise you, if there are any questions tonight, we will do our very best. But by all means, thank you ladies for being here. If we can turn and see how we did.
Good evening. Most of you know me, I'm Tony Bongard, I'm the principal of Lindbergh School.
Good evening, Krista Boris, Vice Principal at the high school, junior senior high school.
I'll start and then Krista will take over after that. Again, it's the state assessments. We're going to kind of go quickly through the slideshow. Dr. Cirillo said it will be on the website. There are 3 state assessments. It's a PARC test. PARC, this is the 4th administration. PARC ELA is in grades 3 to 11. And the math PARC test is in 3 to 8. And then in Algebra 1 geometry and Algebra 2. There are 5 performance levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're most concerned with level 4 and 5. That's the targets that we want to hit as many as possible. Level 4 is met expectations, and level 5 is exceeded expectations. Again, we also want to look at the other levels to see that we are reducing level 1 and level 2 and moving those level 2s up to level 3s. And so on up the line.
Question, please. Approach, what's the difference between approach and net?
Well, they're almost at the expectations. Okay, level 4 means they made it. And you have to watch a lot of those level 4s because if they just made it, you still have to keep your eye on their scores and look at the level 3s to see how high they have shown progress. This screen is showing all of the levels from 2016 up to 2018. It's going again from 3 to 11, showing the percentage of students who met or exceeded expectations. This is ELA.
Guys, and just for clarification, as you're digesting that for a minute, the students that were before us tonight all had perfect scores, which is equivalent to a 750, which is clearly exceeding expectations and a level 5. There are many students who also are exceeding expectations based on the percentages. I know some kids that missed a perfect score by 2 points. And what I said earlier jokingly is not a joke. The state, with 2 students who had perfect scores last year and perfect scores this year, do not consider that showing growth. I don't know how that's not showing growth. I get 750 is 750, but I also think a perfect score in 4th grade versus a perfect